Welcome to the Church Solutions Podcast, brought to you by JSL Solutions. The Church Solutions Podcast is designed to help equip you and your church in the use of technology and other tools and services. And now, here are your hosts, Steve Lacy and Phil Thompson.
And it's great to be with you today. My name is Phil Thompson.
And I'm Steve Lacy.
And we bring you this Church Solutions Podcast every week, almost, unless one of us is on vacation or sick
or broken down.
Or broken down somewhere on the side of the road, which is what I was on my little vacation. Yeah. My vacation turned out really well for my wife and for my son, but I ended up staying home.
Yes, you can explain that mystery real quick?
I blew a head gasket on my 2000 Ford Excursion pulling my Jeep. I have a Jeep. I have a hobby that's extreme rock crawling. It's not extreme compared to what it is now. Years ago it was. But I have big tires and big axles on my Jeep. I have a Jeep Scrambler. And if I want to go somewhere to do off-roading, I have to pull it on a trailer because it's geared down, and driving it to Colorado is just, it'd be like the wagon trains. It'd take me, a year to get there, So I pull it everywhere, and we packed up to go to Colorado and got about 45 miles down the road here to Benson, Arizona, and apparently blew a head gasket and had to limp back to Tucson. And so I ended up buying my wife a new car. It's a long story, but I bought her a new car because she was actually driving the Ford Excursion to work every day. And then my son ended up going down to Mexico with his friends. And Phil stayed home trying to figure out
how to pay for everything.
So that was my vacation. Well, we are a company called JSL Solutions, and we help churches use technology. And we'll talk about streaming video later if we have time, or mobile apps, which is what we produce, as well as church management systems. But today we're going to talk about technology, right?
We're talking 6 ways to create a culture of innovation in your church.
So when we talk about a culture of innovation, what we're talking about, I don't know about you, but we're all busy people out there, especially if you're listening to this podcast. You're probably involved in ministry, either as a leader, a pastor, or at least a busy volunteer. And it is very difficult because you're chasing your tail, doing all these other things with your church and your family and your kids and maybe your hobby. It's hard sometimes to really get innovative, to really take time out to say, hey, how can we improve what we're doing at our church or even our business maybe? How can we really, get more on the cutting edge and use technology? What can we do to innovate? And it's hard to do that when you're busy, when you're doing your usual day-to-day things.
And if you don't have the right culture within your church, within your staff, then actually innovation is not encouraged. It's actually discouraged.
Well, you get busy and just so many little things to do. So, and that's, you just touched on the key here. The key to doing this is to create a culture of innovation.
Yes.
It's got to be a culture. It's got to be, we hear today in the United States of America about, we need to change things. We need to do this. And part of the reason we have a hard time changing our culture in the United States is because it's been our culture for years and years. And you have to, if you want to make a change, you've got to change the culture, whether it's race relations, gun control, whatever the situation is. So it's the same way in the church. If you want to innovate, you've got to create a culture that will lend itself to that creativity.
Yeah, Chuck Colson had said that you can't change the culture through politics. That you've got to. It's politics is downstream of culture.
That's
you
right.
Change the culture, and then you'll change your politics.
I agree.
Anyway,
yeah.
We are getting into how to set up or how to establish a culture of innovation. So we've got six keys to that.
Yeah, let's jump into this. Creativity really matters, I believe, in ministry. It really matters. We have a creative God. Most people would agree He's creative. And it only makes sense that we serve God with our creativity. And that's part of the reason why churches never seem to go forward in life, because they're still stuck in 1965 or whatever the deal is. So how do you develop a culture of innovation in your church?
So number one, you need a theology of innovation.
A theology of innovation. So what we mean by that is, again, we mentioned God's creative, and I believe that all of us are wired, at least to some degree, to be creative. At least to some degree. Yes. There are more creative people than others. I'll give you that.
And as our notes point out, they talk about how all children are all creative, and they are very creative at a young age, and as they get, as they mature and grow, some of that creativity gets driven out of them.
Well, I think it does, because we have these programs that don't always lend themselves to being creative. And so, we teach kids the color between the lines and all this stuff. And, there's a purpose for that. But there's a purpose to really enhance creativity and innovation. And so we believe that everybody's got at least a spark of that inside of them.
And God is naturally creative. He created the universe.
Right.
Yeah. All in it, so we need a theology of innovation.
So we need to create that in our own lives. We need to say, you know what, I can be creative at least to some degree, and then we need to foster that. So the second point is the atmosphere. We need to create a creative atmosphere. We've got to create some kind of a place, a room, so to speak, if you want to use it figuratively or literally, where you can really sit down and create that environment so that you can think forward.
This reminds me of, there was early days with myflock.com. The company was actually purchased by another company, and we toured their facility, and they had their creative people were in a separate area, and you went into the creative people area, and they had balloons and just toys and a bunch of just crazy stuff all in the office there. It was all geared towards fostering creativity. So as they looked around their atmosphere, they were inspired by just kind of random, playful, creative kind of things all over the place.
That's interesting. Did Raytheon have anything like that?
Raytheon, come to think of it, we actually had Raytheon's big aerospace company here that I spent many years with, and we would hire consultants to come in and work with the engineers on creativity. And we actually got some really good instruction from these consultants on how to innovate and create and be creative. And there were some exercises. This is one that I can pass on to the churches as well. Is you have a problem you want to solve, is what they would do is they would say, okay, we got a team of 4 or 6 of us. We're going to role play a solution, and the way that would be say, well, Phil, you are now Elvis Presley, so you need to come with Elvis's thoughts on how to solve this problem, and Mary over here is Shirley Temple or something, and they would assign different characters, and you over here, you're a wild bear. How would a wild bear? And so, what it tended to do, it got people out of the rut that people are naturally in, and started thinking. And as they heard, what Elvis Presley, how he would solve the problem, that spurred and they set up basically rules of engagement and kind of brainstorming rules. So
interesting. Anyway. That's very interesting. Well, I've never heard of a church doing that. You're talking about Raytheon.
Yeah, but any organization can do that.
Yeah, exactly.
You could have the staff say, hey, our attendance has gone down for the summer. How do we solve this problem? Yeah. Elvis, what do you think? Bear in the woods, what do you think?
That's interesting. That's fascinating. That's something we should try. I know that my leadership team, my church, we have retreats, and we try to have a retreat in a different environment, and instead of just having it around a board table. In fact, there's a famous pastor out there who talks about he never uses a boardroom or even a boardroom style table. They have recliners, and he says, he goes, when I get totally prone, in a prone position, that's where I can be the most creative, and I can discover what God wants us to do. And I think that's interesting. So changing the environment, creating a creative environment will lead to innovation.
Yeah.
So whatever it is you have to do at your church or in your business, whatever it might be, try it and try doing some Elvis, and Elvis impersonation maybe.
Or if you just Google, brainstorming techniques or innovation tips, there's several people that have written that have successfully done
Interesting. All right. Well, the third point here, when we talk about creating a culture of innovation, is, and you kind of touched on this with your what you mentioned earlier, and that is, you've got to stay playful. So playfulness stimulates creativity, and I think that's true, because when you get people laughing, when you get people having fun, scientifically they say the endorphins begin to flow and get going, and so the creativity begins to flow. And I know that when I'm under pressure or I'm in a stressful situation, I don't creativity doesn't come out of me when I'm in a bad or an anxiety related deal. I don't get creative. But if I'm in a more relaxed, playful environment, that's where you can stimulate some creativity and innovation.
Yeah, there's another technique that kind of ties into the playful business. So if you're trying to be creative and solve a problem or do something new, there's what they call the wilder, and wildest approach.
Wilder, and wildest?
Yes.
Okay, tell us about that.
So the way that works is people are around and go, well, our summer attendance is dropping down. Somebody may suggest that what if we had movies at church or something like that? That would be maybe a wild.
Right.
And then you're supposed to take that particular idea and try to make it wilder.
Okay.
And then once you made it, Wilder says, well, rather than movies, let's have church at the drive-in this next Sunday. And then then you just go to the wildest, which is, really an extreme idea that would say, we'll launch a bunch of hot air balloons and watch the movie from just some crazy. So you basically, you get these ideas out there in a group of people that will stimulate other thoughts. He said, well, maybe we can't get a bunch of hot air balloons to take our congregation up in, but what if we could do X? And so
if we use drones or something.
There you go. We can have some drones that will fly around, and it stimulates some other thoughts that become more realistic. So the idea is you take an idea, you make it wild, you make it wilder, and you make it just wildest.
Wow. And
explore those. So that's kind of consistent with being playful.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think so. And we tend to take things so seriously in life. And as you know, I had a heart-related problem back in January, and I'm really trying hard to really be more present and not take life so seriously. I mean, you've got to be serious in things. I'm not saying that, but you've got to be playful, and you can't let things bug you. Because hey, it's in the big scheme of life.
Head gaskets are nothing, huh?
Yeah, so the problem with your engine blowing up is it's stressful, but it's nothing compared to, your heart blowing up. So I guess being playful, staying playful, it does stimulate creativity. And it's something you might want to consider if you're leading your church or involved in leading a staff or involved in some kind of a business or something where you can create some environment to be innovative. All right, let's move on.
So number 4, you need the freedom to fail.
All right, so most people know this. That's been talked about a lot, but innovation means not being afraid to fail. So there's no such thing, obviously, as everybody's going to make a mistake. I mean, you're never, somebody said one time, you're never a failure until you stop trying. And so there's going to be issues where, things happen and you're not always going to be successful, but I think you've got to have the freedom.
I think this is one of the bigger issues in the church today, because the church is very afraid of failing or messing up or making a mistake.
Right.
And so they go to great extremes to avoid any kind of failure.
Yep.
And so what that does is just completely stifle creativity within the church, and I mean I've seen it, and if you don't have a list of failures that you can point to within your church, then
Right.
you aren't trying anything.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I remember I used to work with your senior pastor, and I remember him telling us one time we had a really small staff, but we had staff and volunteers. I think your wife was one of the people that used to work with our children's ministry.
Yes.
And one of the things he said, he goes, I want my staff members to make at least one mistake a week. And if they aren't making mistakes, then that means you're not trying. And the next week, I made a $4,000 mistake in the budget. So I brought that up. I said, by the way, you said you wanted one mistake a week, so I just made a $4,000 mistake in our budget. Sorry about that.
And you were rewarded, right?
I was rewarded. I got fired, I think. No, I didn't get fired. But seriously, I think it's a good point.
Well, you want to make mistakes trying something new.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes,
exactly.
if you're
you want to step out on a limb, and there's going to be. So you got to have the freedom. All right. So that's a point a lot of people have heard, but I think you make a good statement where in churches we tend to not want to step out.
No,
for whatever reason.
we play it safe all the time.
Yeah.
And so there's very little innovation in the church.
Yeah. So try something different next week, or at least try something different in the next quarter. Plan some things out and try something different.
Yeah, you want to fail small a bunch of times. You don't want to, have one big failure, but
yeah, you don't want to have something
that way you're
catastrophic.
going to learn.
Right. Okay. So as we move on here about ways to create a culture of innovation in your church.
Number 5, you need to think big.
Need to think big. And again, it's hard to do that sometimes when you're chasing your tail, when you're trying to get everything done every day, trying to get a message ready, or you're trying to take care of volunteers, or whatever it is you do. But the point is, you've really got to take some time out to set some goals. And that means putting aside some time, maybe once a month, where you just set aside a day or two where you're going to think big. I mean, maybe if you can do it once a week, but at least I would say once a month where you look at some things and say, hey, how can we think bigger? How can we set some goals? What can we do that, is maybe beyond our own human capability, but maybe, we feel like God's leading us to go a certain direction here. What can we do that can add to that?
Yeah, and there's an interesting footnote in our notes here about Rick Warren's church. They felt compelled to create 300 small groups back when 2002.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they felt God leading them to say, no, let's add a 0 to that. You need to start 3,000 small groups. And they're thinking, oh my gosh, how do we, it's going to be really tough to create 300. How are we going to do 3,000? And he said it completely changed their thinking about how to do that. And the purpose-driven life material came out of that.
Right, yeah.
And so
you may not agree with everything Rick Warren does from Saddleback, but I like his methodology. I like how he's trying to reach people, how he's trying to connect people. And, of course, they've got a big church. But he's not satisfied. He wants to keep moving forward, and that's an interesting example there of how they.
Well, it was when they started to think big. It kind of shifts the focus to how do I solve this bigger problem. Kind of ties into the wilder wildest, I guess. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. So think big, and if you're not thinking big, take some time out and get with some people and come up with some crazy ideas and begin to work on that a little bit, and you'll come up with something. All right, so as we move on.
So our last point, you must do something that matters, number 6.
So there's a guy by the name of Erwin McManus. He's actually I think the founding pastor of a church called Mosaic Church. I think he's over there, if I remember right, he's in the Los Angeles area. And he's done a lot of things besides pastor a church. He's actually gotten into some filmmaking and some other things. But he said the reality is that if you're not trying to accomplish something meaningful, you're not really being pressed into the creative process. And so the idea with innovation here is you're not trying to innovate just so we can be cool. we're the cool church. We're the cool guys here. It's not that. That's not the goal. The goal is you want to innovate because you want to reach people. And you want to reach people with the love of God and the good news about Jesus. And so innovation leads into that. You want to try to do something that really matters.
Right.
So it could be something as simple as, we've got homeless people on the corners of streets, panhandling. What can we do to help these people? It doesn't have to be this huge, gigantic thing. I mean, we're talking about thinking big, but still, you can use innovation to connect people, to reach people, to do things to help people. It can be small, it can be big, but whatever it is, it's got to be something that matters. Not just, hey, we want to do this because it'll make us look like we're really cool.
And that's a key to pretty much the driver behind everyone that's on staff. You want to do something that matters.
Should be.
Yes.
Absolutely should be. So my takeaway from this here as we wrap up is it's all about helping your church reach people. It's all about connecting with people, and innovation can do that. And the only problem you have with some of that is sometimes you have some people in the background that don't want to change. They don't want to get creative because they're content with the way they are. But the world is changing. Young people are coming on, and innovation is something that is a part of their lifestyle outside of the church. I think it needs to be a part of what's inside the church. So it could be something simple. It could be something more elaborate, like some of the things we've talked about here. But it's all about creating a culture and making it so that we can do some things to connect with people. That's my take on it anyhow.
All right. Makes sense.
That's kind of what we try to do. We try to do this with JSL Solutions. We're constantly trying to innovate what we do, improve things, make things better. We're trying to help churches and ministries use technology. And that's why we do what we do with streaming video. We have a product called StreamingChurch.tv. We have another product which is called ChurchAppLive.com, which is a mobile app to help connect people, your members, to your church. It's got some innovative tools in it.
Yes.
We've got
some
myflock.com.
out-of-the-box things, yes.
What was that? I'm sorry.
Some out-of-the-box thinking.
There's some things that we try to do.
That you will find only in that app.
Yeah. I mean, it's just something to think about. And then myflock.com, which is kind of the flagship, right, of our little deal. And we're always doing things with that, creating new designs and improving the website templates and doing some stuff there. So, and then we even have greeter.church, which is very innovative.
Yes.
Tell people about greeter.church while we have
Greeter.church is an online web host for your church. So as we're more and more of your interactions with people coming to your church for the first time, they're going to come through your church. And this is just moving that greeter from the lobby or foyer of your church all the way out to the website.
So when people look on your website, if they want to chat with somebody, they can chat with a live person and they can get information about your church.
Yes, and we provide the greeter for you.
We do it.
Yes.
So if you're interested in that, that's our newest product. Just go to greeter.church. That's all you have to type in your browser, greeter.church, and that's the website, and you can see that there. So anyhow, we'd love to hear from you on this. If you have some ideas on this, some thoughts, maybe you agree, maybe you disagree, let us hear from you. There's lots of ways you can contact us. You can just go to one of our websites and chat with us. StreamingChurch.tv is the main deal there. Or you can email us, support@StreamingChurch.tv. And you can listen to this podcast on your favorite podcast provider. Did I get that right?
Yes.
So we're on
iTunes,
iTunes.
Stitcher.
Yeah, we're on Stitcher, iTunes. We're just look for Church Solutions Podcast, even on YouTube. But I think you have to look for StreamingChurch.tv if you want to hear the audio on YouTube. Yes. Or NewMediaMinistries.tv. There's lots of places you can find us. We're out there. We're everywhere. All right. We're done. Folks, we appreciate your time today. And if we can help you in any way, please get a hold of us. His name is Steve Lacy. My name is Phil Thompson. We will catch you next time on another edition of the Church Solutions Podcast.